All right, so authority. This is very important in our catalogs. It makes it so that they function in a really useful way with linking in the catalog. So what happens with authority is that people, subjects, places, the titles of really important works get what are called authority records, and they're basically catalog records for that entity that clearly define who or what it is. And so this is a way of differentiating all the John Smiths from each other. Each one has a different authority record. It's a way of making sure that a major work like War and Peace there's a way to always find all the copies of War and Peace in the library, even if you've got one in Russian and you've got a couple in English and you've got a Spanish translation. All of those are pulled together, and the authority record does that. So it creates a way that if you've got the name authority record of an author, so you've got the authority record for Tolstoy, then a book by that author is tied to that author's authority record. Another book by that author is also tied to that authority record. So you could search for the author and find all the books by that author, even if you spelled Tolstoy different ways. So in the authority record, it can have that Tolstoy is spelled Tolstoy, but it could also have an alternate spelling for Tolstoi. If somebody puts in that I spelling, they will still find those books by that same person. Plus, they can find books about that person. They can find movies based on the books by that person, as long as you've put into those bibliographic records the linkage to that authority record. So it's sort of magic. I really love authority records. Like the way that these work is simple for the most part, but it makes some really complex things happen. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time on authority records today, but I want to give you at least the overview, and then if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, there are workshops through the state library. You just have to let them know that you want those workshops. There's a half day where you just do the basics of authority, like finding the right record and using it in your bibliographic records correctly, and then there's one where we get more advanced and you actually create your own authority record, which is kind of fun, and do some stuff like that. So, and those are each half days, so you can stack them on top of each other. So just let Lauren Clossy know if you want stuff like that. So in your bibliographic records, what happens with the authority data is that it gets put into very specific places in the bibliographic records. Because remember, computers are not smart. So you have to put this data that's supposed to link in very specific places and code it in very specific ways. So it goes in your 1XX field, so the 100 field for the author, you should be using something from an authority record if at all possible. And given sometimes they don't exist and you make something up. But for a lot of people there are authority records. Anything for, like if you were cataloging War and Peace, the title record for that would go into the 240 field. Subject headings go in the 6XX. We'll talk about them this afternoon. Other people's names go in the 7XX, as do other titles. So you might have a classical music CD that has like 2 symphonies by Beethoven. Well, you'd put both of those symphonies into 700 fields so that you have a link to those major works. And then the 8XX field, this is where you put series information. And series information coming straight out of an authority record. So this is where that linkable information would go. So we'll look at all of these a little bit as we go forward. The stuff that goes into these fields is not transcribed from the resource. So like with your statement of responsibility, you transcribe from the resource. For your 100 field for that author, you do not take that from the resource. You take that from the authority record. And what you do with the authority record is you can actually go find that. There's a few places you can get it for free. My favorite is authorities.loc.gov. So you can actually go in here and do, let's see, authorities.loc.gov. There we go. So once you get here, you can just go in and search authorities. And you can find subjects, names, titles, name title, when you have the name and the title together. So you can do something like you have a book by Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien. So you can actually look for the name, and incidentally, if you scroll down, you have instructions on how to search for different things. So it talks about with the name, you should do last name first. So I'm going to do Tolkien J.R.R. and see what comes up. And right there at the top, this looks like him. You can usually tell if you've got the right one if you're looking for a major person and there's a big number in the number of bib records. This is the number of records that Library of Congress holds that have this authority name in them somewhere. So that's a good tip off. This is probably the J.R.R. Tolkien that you're in fact looking for. So you just click on the red button, you go to the authority record, just keep clicking, sometimes it takes a while, and you get to that authority record. And what you're going to do is for your bibliographic record, where you've got the book by J.R.R. Tolkien, you're going to take all this information that's in this 100 field here, and you're going to copy it and you're going to paste it into the other record. Now you may have to do some stuff to fix the subfield codes just so they work in your catalog. You'll just have to see what happens. But copy this with everything in there. So the name in parentheses, the dates, everything that's in that 100 field, take that, put it into your bibliographic record. So if it's The Hobbit, take this name, put it into the 100 field in your record. Now you have that authority name for the author. If it's a book about J.R.R. Tolkien, you're just going to take this name and you're going to put it in a 600 field. What's really nice about this is it gives you clues about where you're going to put it. The first number is going to change depending on whether it's the main author, an added author, or a contributor, a subject, even a series, but those second two numbers are going to stay the same. So that's kind of nice. You have a little cheat sheet, plus the first indicator is going to stay the same. Cheating. So you can use this to get those names. You can also use it to check them. So if they're not showing up that they're linking in Cardinal, you can come over here and just check to see if, in fact, the correct name is in there. If it is the correct name, the computer just probably hasn't gotten around to creating a link for that authority record, and don't worry about it. If it differs, now you have something that may need to be double-checked and updated in that record so that it matches that authority record. Now make sure it's for the correct person. And there are different places where you can do that. I mean, there's some information here, like saying that Tolkien is from South Africa, died in England, worked for universities of Leeds and Oxford. That sort of information can be handy. There are different forms of the name, so here's where you can get information that will help if people misspell things or write in another language. So you do have a little Hebrew here, looks like some Chinese, maybe Japanese. And then you have these citations down here, and sometimes you'll find really good stuff down here. you'll find a little biography like in the 670. And yes, it's from Wikipedia. It's fine. Wikipedia is not all bad. But you can find some good information down there in the record to narrow down who you're looking for. So I want to show you another name because you know about J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, it's kind of one, but there are a whole bunch of Thomas Archers, a lot of Thomas Archers. If you have something by Thomas Archer, now you have a lot of stuff to sort through. You do have things that can help you narrow down, like middle names, birth dates. And if you think this is the one you're looking for, you can also find information like here it's talking about basically the resource that somebody used to create this authority record. So it's actually his dissertation. This is my father. So I know which Thomas Archer I'm looking for. But this is his dissertation, and honestly, this will narrow it down because you're looking for the Thomas Archer who wrote a dissertation on some sort of bug. Trogoderma glabrum. Maybe it's a plant, but it's probably a bug. I'd have to ask him. I showed him that he had an authority record once, and he was like, "Oh, they got my name for my dissertation. Man, I wrote a lot of stuff after that." I said, "Yeah, and you wrote it under T.L. Archer, so this needs to be updated, but I'm not allowed to touch authority records on a international level because I don't have an institution sponsoring me, so I can't update his authority record." He'll be fine. He doesn't care. He's retired. But you can use this to find all sorts of stuff and double check those names and make sure it's the correct person, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes somebody grabs a name and it looks like it's probably the right one, and then somebody's updated the authority records and you go in and you're like, nope, not the right name. So if it's not linking, go check it. Or if it doesn't look right, go check it. And by the way, fictional characters do have authority records. So you can actually find Kermit the Frog. Your fictional characters do have authority records. And you can go and find these, and they can be linkable. So Kermit, comma, subfield C, the frog. And if people look for Kermie or Uncle Kermit, they will still find Kermit the Frog. You see the magic of the authority record. Different spellings. So, and it even, defines Kermit for you nicely. I love that they have, like, that he's from United States, that he is an actor, a singer, a theater producer and director, a stage manager. I mean, how awesome is that? So you've got all sorts of information, so you can differentiate this Kermit from another Kermit if you needed to. But it also makes it so that somebody searching for Kermie will find Kermit. So when Miss Piggy comes to your library, she will still find him. So those are handy, and they sort of live in the background, and it's something that your cataloging committee is working on getting Evergreen to handle better and better all the time. Eventually there will be certain people who will be in charge of, like, making sure that authority records themselves are in good shape for you guys, and that you can use those, especially for things that are maybe not in that national, international database, because there will be local names. I mean, you have stuff like in genealogy collections where it's all about this local family that's a big deal around here and nobody else cares. It's a big deal in Podunk County where you have your library branch and you've got like 500 things about these people, and they exist nowhere else in the world because nobody else cares what that family did. And there will be authority records for that sort of stuff. For now, do what you can. But that creates that way of linking things together. So for now, when you encounter things where you don't have an authority record, you can't find one anywhere, That's okay. Go ahead and just do something like last name, comma, first name. If you know dates, you could always throw those in and put that where you need it to be. And at least it's a space holder so that later on somebody can come in and create an authority record for that. And if you become the expert on that, go ahead and start collecting information so that you can contribute to the authority record or create it yourself someday. Woohoo, they're so fun. It's just a different way of thinking. They're kind of interesting. I mean, you're creating a biography or something like that. So, best practices thinking about authority, always use the name as it appears in the authority record 1XX field. So don't look at the name as it appears in like a 400 field. That's not the name you're going to use. Use the one that's in the 100 field in the record, and take that entire name and copy and paste it into your record, or make sure it matches what's in your bibliographic record. Even if you know an author goes by another name or has a pseudonym, or that what you're looking at is a pseudonym, use the name from the authority record. So there are books that have the name in the 100 field that they are by Mark Twain. There are ways in the authority record to link Mark Twain to Samuel Clemens. So you can just use the name that's on the resource. If you think your patrons are going to totally freak and they need like that name of the real author or the pseudonym or whatever, throw in a little 500 note. Just something like, such and such person is the pseudonym of such and such person. That's a sort of simple way to get around it. But honestly, if the authority record is done right, and most of them are, then you should have a link between that person's pseudonym and their real name. And it should work just fine. And there may be weird changes coming with this sort of stuff in the new year when and if they update RDA, but if that happens, I'll let you guys know. I'm sure we'll have new workshops to update you on all of that. So just stay tuned. But for now, the pseudonym gets that 100 field and the authority record link, and that's okay because they're linked to the real person's name also. So the fields need to link. Obviously, this is not something you can necessarily do at this point, but it is something you can check in the record when you're looking at it, see if it shows up. So we saw yesterday, if you're looking in the catalog, if you're in a 100 field, it should after that have a delimiter 0 and then Cardinal in parentheses and then some sort of number. That means that it has linked and everything's okay. If that's not there, double check and make sure it's the right name or term, and if it is, then just leave it, because sometime the computers are coming and fixing that for you. So it's there, it's where you need it, it looks like what you need it to look like, so you just don't want to mess with it. If you do run into problems, if the name looks totally wrong, if you just don't think that this is something that works, if you look at the authority record and you're positive that this is not the right person, but you want a second opinion, anything, go to the authorities working group. You can go to the catalog listserv and send out a call and be like, I don't know what's going on. When in doubt with authorities at this point, just send out the email and say, what the heck is going on? Is this the correct person? And you can put out like the numbers for the authority records that you've found in Library of Congress authorities and say, you can even give them links. This is the one that's being used, but this is the one that I think needs to be used. Can somebody tell me if I'm going crazy? And most likely you're not. And you never know, but most likely you're fine, and you just need a little reassurance because these are weird. So when in doubt with these, ask for that reassurance.